This is a roll of shiny Mylar. It's old, I've used it on many photo sessions, it's battered and creased and is perfect for the underwater look without getting our feet wet that we're gonna do in the studio. I also need two lights, so I've got a hard light source to create all the ripply effects and then a soft light source to fill in the shadows. And that is pretty much everything we need, apart from a really good model. So let's get some light set, let's get a model in, let's get shooting. Oh, I need another light stand over here, you'll see. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's gonna be the model for this underwater styled photo session, and let's start around the back because you don't need a complicated background. You could quite happily just have a white wall, but what you do need is something smooth, which my wall isn't. So this is actually the back of one of my more expensive backgrounds. It's the side that the manufacturers didn't want you to see, but it's perfect for what I need today. Once we've got that set up, we can talk about, well, the obvious thing right above Chloe's head. This is Mylar. It's a super shiny sheet and it's going to give us that underwater look if we light it correctly. So let me get a light and show you what I mean. So I'm going to be using a flash, but very specifically one with a pretty good modeling lamp, because this is going to help me to see reflections and shiny bits and all sorts going on as I move it around. And as I move it about, you can see that we get reflections from the Mylar on the background and also on Chloe's face. Now, where you put this is going to vary on so many factors that you've got to be prepared to move it as you go along. So I'm going to start on a very low light stand and I'm going to put it down here. And the great thing is, with just a tiny movement of the Mylar, you can see we're underwater, sort of. I think it's easier to get this light wrong than it is to put it in the right position. So let's quickly go through what I think is the wrong place for the light. What I'm looking for is actually putting the light directly onto Chloe's face. Now, this is the wrong place to put it. If I took a picture like this now, it would look like Halloween light because all the light is coming up from below. But in reality, I want the light to come from above as if Chloe was actually underwater. So with a small angle of the light, I can change it so it hits the Mylar in front of Chloe and the reflections bounce down from above onto Chloe's face. It's a fine line between getting it right and getting it wrong, but when you get it right, you'll know it. The one thing I'm not happy about is the color. Now, I'm shooting in RAW, so I could adjust this in post-processing. We're going to get to Photoshop later on. But to save me some time and to make this whole session feel like it's underwater right now, I'm actually going to dial in some blue and some green to this picture to create something that just instantly feels a little bit more underwater in color. And yes, of course, I'm also going to bring the white balance down. I'm going to bring it down to about 5000K, which may not have been as blue as you might have imagined. But remember, I can change it in post-production, and if it looks right on screen during the photo session, then it's probably about right for now. I could do this entire setup with just one flash, but I think a fill flash is going to be really useful. It's going to put some light on the shadow side we've got here, but I need to think carefully about this. I don't want another hard light source, so this won't be a snoot. I want to have soft light so it doesn't add any more reflections and sparkly bits to the picture. And because it is going to go way up there, I'm using a strip box, so most of the light stays above Chloe, because remember, that's where the light's actually coming from. I've got to be careful that I don't get this pointing at the background, because I also don't want this light to wash out that effect we've so carefully created. So I'm going to feather it away. Having said that, this light is going to be super low in power. It's an Evolve 200 Pro. It's on 1/64th power. Our main light, the Explore 300, is on 1/8 power. So there's definitely a difference between the two lights, but they're doing two very different jobs. So this is just that fill light, and then this is both lights combined together. There's just one more thing we need to add to make this feel a little bit more underwater, because if we were underwater, things would float to the surface. Now, we've got to deal with gravity rather than buoyancy, so instead, we're going to get Chloe to wave her arms around, and I've got my trusty studio leaf blower to give some movement to Chloe's hair. I say me, I'm going to get somebody else to assist me with this, but that's basically this setup ready to go. So Chloe, are you ready? Let's take a few photos like this. To help me defy the laws of gravity and create that buoyancy look, I've got Freya way down at the bottom of the scene, and she's using the leaf blower to blow Chloe's hair up, because although I'm not trying to create reality, that is kind of what we expect hair to do underwater, to float up. Now, this isn't a realistic photo session, so we're not going to get Chloe wet, we're not going to have any of that going on, but nonetheless, this all has to work together, but there are some downsides. The first one being the fan is so loud, communication is, well, rather difficult amongst everybody. And secondly, it's also a very random photo session, so you're going to get way more failures than you get successes. The key here is to take a few pictures, stop, review, and then keep going. The more pictures you take, the more successes you're going to get. Even before the photo session started, I knew I was going to do some post-processing, and that's really helpful because you can plan it in to your photography. What I've done here is add a bit more green to the raw file and lower the contrast just to really emphasize that underwater feel, but everything else is kind of optional. Most of the work happened in camera, but there's definitely some improvements to be made here in Photoshop. And the first one is I'm going to give this a shallower depth of field. So I'm going to go to Filter, and Blur Gallery and Tilt Shift. Now I love Tilt Shift. It's two filters in one. You get a blurry filter at the top and at the bottom. Everything is adjustable, so you can move it around a little bit, and you can move these lines to change the beginning and end points for the blur. So we can drag that down a little bit like that, and you can control the amount of blur. If you can find it just right, you can get a bendy arrow, and you can even twist it around. I just want to blur out the ends of Chloe's hair to really make that depth of field effect feel more realistic. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I've done that because if we were really underwater, then there'd be less light down there. You'd need a shallower depth of field, faster aperture, and so on. And the other thing you might get are rays of light coming down. I've chosen this image because we can see the rays of light in these dark areas really clearly. But how do you add them? Well, there are loads of ways. The way I'm going to do it is using a Photoshop action. So let's go to Window and Actions to see the Actions palette. And then what I need to do is get my actions. Now, luckily, I've made these for you already. You can download them from my website. I'll leave a link in the video description. Whilst you're down there, check out the gear links and also give this video a thumbs up. That's always appreciated. So here are the actions I've downloaded from my website. I'm going to drag them and drop them on the Actions panel. And that's it. I now have 10 different rays of light effects. Now they're all different, so play around with them and discover which ones work for you. I quite liked number 2 for this image, so let's play underwater rays number 2. Just select it, click the play button, and there it is. Now I've left these so they are semi-editable. So that means you can adjust things like get the move tool and you can drag it around on your image any way you like. I think over there looks pretty good. There are some other things you can adjust, but let's put another one on and we'll talk about that in a second. Let's go for the next one, rays 3. Click on the play button. The first thing you might notice is each time I do this, I'm actually making a new image. So the original image is never touched. It always works on a duplicate image, which is kind of for safety reasons. And then, yes, you can move these around, but I can also change the opacity. So I can make my light rays brighter or darker or whatever I like. I can change the blending mode so we could have them as color dodge or anything you want. I think screen still works quite best. Let's bring it back down. I've also left it so you can change the color. So the layer at the top, double click that. That will bring up the hue saturation palette, and you can change this around to your heart's content, and you can have all sorts of different colors. If you're not doing underwater stuff, that might be exactly what you want to do. And of course, being layers, you can always add layer masks and what have you. But I reckon, there we go. That is pretty much exactly what I'm after. So with a few tweaks and adjustments, there is my final image completed. If you want to know what fabric we used, it's called organza. It's really lightweight, and I tied lengths of it to springy hairbands, which meant that as Chloe waved her arms around, it floated perfectly in front of her eyes on every single photo. But I did get a few where it didn't, and enough to make this whole session really worthwhile. Now, if you've enjoyed this, why not leave me a comment down below, give it a thumbs up whilst you're there, and of course you've clicked on that subscribe button. And if you want to see how I do underwater photography for real, without getting my feet wet, then check out this video where we did an underwater tank photography session a few years ago. I'm Gavin Hoey, thanks for watching.